All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started now. This is how to compete with the Roblox Metaverse. And there's my name. That's not my last name, that's a smiley face. All right, so introductions. For those who don't know me, I'm Garrett Swanson. Again, the smiley face is not my last name. I started playing Roblox back in 2011. And when I say I started playing Roblox, I don't mean I played it once in 2011 and I was like, yeah, that's cool. I basically played it up until I graduated college. I'm one of those kids, unfortunately. But I've been involved in this space as a consumer for a pretty long time. And I got involved with Roblox likes, these games that are like Roblox or just clone Roblox. Ooh, my computer just... Uh-oh. Did I do that? Hold on, let me double check my battery. It's acting weird. Sorry about that. Yeah, I have plenty of battery. I think I unplugged the thing. All right. There we go. Back on track. All right. So I've been involved with Roblox likes since 2016. So these are games that, you know, some of them just copied Roblox, some of them tried to compete but didn't do it very well. And I've been, you know, doing all of that stuff for, what has it been, like 6 years now, being involved with that type of stuff. And in 2018, I decided to make my own just because, you know, I thought I could do it. And so I've been working on that competitor, it's World Build right there. I've been doing that for about 3.5 years now. So I've been in this space for a while trying to compete, and I've always been, you know, laser focused trying to figure out the next step I can take to compete better. And I've learned a few things, mostly what not to do, but I've also learned a lot of things that I've seen work well or work for me. So if you're trying to compete and you see the same opportunities that I do to compete with Roblox, then maybe you're not so different from me. All right, so I won't waste anybody's time. I'll start off with the good stuff, and I'll explain the details throughout the talk. It did it again. Yeah, it doesn't like me. Am I doing something wrong? I feel like I'm barely even touching the computer. All right. My taskbar keeps disappearing too, which is making this harder. If it happens a couple more times, I'll just pull up the presentation and do it without notes. All right. Oh, spoiler! Don't. This is your best advice for competing with Roblox. This isn't a word with a deeper meaning. I'm not saying by not competing you're actually the best competitor. I'm just telling you shouldn't try to compete with them. This isn't that deep. This is advice that's been passed down for me from plenty of other people, and I've heard it basically since I first started to compete with Roblox. And this isn't a comeback story about how I went against the grain and made it anyways. You know, this is just genuine advice. I'm trying to help you guys out. If you're a college student and you're trying to compete with Roblox, maybe reconsider that. Yeah, I've heard this a lot. This is probably one of the hardest undertakings you can make in the game industry, to compete with Roblox. It's a very big game, it's very weird, and you know, MMORPGs are a completely different thing. They're also very difficult, but in a more normal way. Everybody's made or heard of MMORPGs and what goes into it, but there aren't many stories about what goes into making a Roblox. So here's a list of why you should not compete, and we'll go over that real quick. So for starters, you're too late. Roblox was made in 2006. That's like 16 years ago. They've had a long time to build up their technology and their audience to make what they have today. And they did it all without competition for like, you know, like 10 of those years at the very least. We're like Roblox but blank. This isn't a statement that's going to get people to play your game instead. And I mock this phrase as if I don't use it to describe my own game, but this phrase isn't enough. People play Roblox for reasons like the existing communities. There's a huge variety of games. Maybe you can make money on Roblox. And saying you're like Roblox but different in some superficial way isn't going to bring anybody from Roblox to your game. because you don't have things like the audience or the thousands of games out there. You don't have maybe as great of a way to pay people because your audience is so small. It's just, this isn't a good enough reason. So the chicken or the egg deadlock. This goes back to that old saying. It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Pretty sure it's the chicken. But users, developers, and content are kind of the three biggest pillars in your Roblox competitor. And they all feed into each other. You can't have users without first having content. You can't have content without first having developers. And you can't have developers without first having users. They all feed into each other that way, and they all require each other to exist. So it's kind of a deadlock. How do you get started with that? So they're also an established metaverse. Not a big fan of this word, but it has a lot of meanings, and I'll explain the usage that I'm using today. Metaverse isn't just like a VR chat room that's been done hundreds of times, and Roblox doesn't even have a VR chat room. A metaverse, in this case, we're talking about these closed communities on the internet where all of the users, they sell things to each other, they interact with each other exclusively, and the greater being that is Roblox, controls any outside influence. They decide what ads are on their game, on their platform. They decide what brands get to come in. They're established, and they've done this for a long time. This can make it hard to pull an audience from them because they can block you out. And it can also be difficult to establish your game as being legitimate enough to warrant the same amount of players as Roblox. If your game doesn't have Lil Nas X performing on it, how are you as good as Roblox, All right, so the cost trap. This one's basically just about money. There's a lot of cost that goes into making a game like this, and I'll go into more details later in the talk, but a lot of money. You don't have the team or the technology to compete. Let's face it, unless Paxton's in here, you probably don't have a team big enough to even make something like Roblox. You don't have the technology to do so. You're not going to make your own engine probably unless you're willing to put 5 years of your development time into just the engine and then start working on community growth. Roblox's team is like 1,200 people, 400 are moderation alone. How do you advertise this game as a service sandbox? It's a weird game, let's face it. There aren't many games like Roblox. It's like a platform, it's like a game all mixed in one. They do a bunch of stuff for you. How do you advertise this? It's weird. You can't just throw money at advertisements and hope it works. All right, so those are the reasons not to compete. But if you're still here, we share some things in common. Maybe number one, you see the same market gap that I do. Roblox is a really large market, and there's probably room for quite a few more games that are like it or even just like it. Number two, maybe you're my friend or family, and if you leave now, it'd be a little bit rude, but that's why you might be here. You're willing to hear the ugly truth in order to give this the best shot you can. This is a very difficult thing to do, and if you're still here and listening, you probably actually want to know, like, what's so difficult about this? How do I actually compete? Now that you've dampened my spirits here, can you help me out a little bit? Or number four, maybe you're naive or egotistical, and you want to do this anyways, and you don't really care what I say. I was both at the time that I tried to do this. So when I look at this list, and I don't know if this is naivety or ego, I didn't see just a bunch of blockers and reasons not to compete with Roblox. I saw them as problems that have solutions, or maybe solutions. And whether or not my solutions are the best way to go about it is kind of up to you and whatever platform you're making. But I can tell you what approaches I've taken and which ones I've seen definitely doesn't work, or which ones maybe kind of work, depending on your game. And for the rest of the session, that's basically what we're going to talk about. So let's start from the top. You're too late, dude. So Roblox has 16 years of technology. Well, you have the power of fully featured game engines on your side. We live in an age where Unity, Unreal, Godot, it's pronounced Godot by the way, not Godot, David. We live in this age where all of these engines exist, and they're fully featured, and they're free. There's no reason for you to make your own proprietary engine unless that's something your company specializes in. You just don't need to do that. It'll set you back like I said, maybe 5 years to make your own custom engine. It's just not worth it. I would highly recommend, again, against making proprietary engine code just to compete with Roblox. It's not a requirement. They do it, but they've also been around for 16 years, and they started on an engine called Ogre 3D, which wasn't their own. They eventually converted, which you could do too, if you get big enough. Roblox has 16 years of audience. Go ahead and enlarge that. So this kind of just makes it easier for you to grow. Believe it or not, this is a better situation than if there was no Roblox at all. If you went back in time to 2006 and you knew about Roblox and how big it was going to be and you tried to make your own, you might fall flat on your face. They've done this for 16 years, and they've done so many things to try and advertise and convey this weird concept of the game. You know, it's like it's housed on a website, and you press a button and there's a game, but the players make the games, and you sell stuff to other players, but some of them are by Roblox. It's a whole thing. It's really, really unique. The fact that they've been around for so long helps you grow. You have a whole generation, basically, of people who know what Roblox is and want stuff like that, but they only have Roblox to choose from. Other companies have already begun competing for second place. There are games out there that are like Roblox that are trying to do the same thing you might be trying to do. They exist already. So what? Now it's not just Roblox. You have to compete with, 4 different platforms already. So how do you compete with that? Well, I'll be honest. I don't think that really matters. The Roblox pie is massive. It's really big enough for, I'd say, at least another 10 games of very big size. What you need to do is find a part of the Roblox market that's underserved, or maybe you're fixing a flaw that Roblox has, or you're doing something that Roblox can't do. You need to find your slice of the pie. I like to call it a pie. It's like easy to remember. Pie, everybody loves pie. You need to find your slice of the Roblox pie, even if it's a really tiny sliver. You need to find that and capitalize on that. Even if it's just as a first step to completely overtake Roblox, don't. Big dreams, maybe don't plan on that. But like, find your slice for starters at the very least. Find your slice of the Roblox pie and take it. Maybe the Roblox fad is ending. It could be. I can't really tell the future, but probably not. And here's why I think not. UGC communities, which stands for user-generated content, they've existed forever. It's an integral part of video games. Gmod, Minecraft private servers, even back to like the Quake and Doom days, where people made mods and shared them for free. This idea of making new gameplay mechanics, making new maps, and sharing them to your friends has been around forever. It's nothing new. Roblox just monetizes it. That's why they're so big and they have so much money. Go back one more. And if you're a grass toucher, if you go outside, maybe you'll remember back in the days of the playground, making up rules to things like, you add rules to soccer, basketball, Foursquare, and you kind of make it your own and you play that with your friends. That's what I did, at least. Even in real life, like sharing new game mechanics and ideas has been around forever. This is nothing new. Roblox is a huge market and nobody's competing. So we're like Roblox, but blank. This is not a good reason to play your game instead. So people play Roblox for content variety, for existing communities, and you don't have any of these yet, especially if you're just starting out. How do you do that? So this is a hard challenge to overcome, but as I've experienced, your audience expectations, they scale with your audience, which kind of makes sense. With my game, I don't have millions of players, and they don't expect millions of games. They expect an amount of, I've never heard the complaint that there's not enough variety of content, on my platform. It's just not something that people really are concerned with. Once you grow you can grow to thousands of games, thousands of users, but it takes time. You shouldn't be focused on having hundreds of thousands of games or hundreds of thousands of users right off the bat. That's not where you start. Superficial changes aren't enough. Not even with other types of games. Superficial changes have never been enough to bring people to your game. So you have to make sure you're blank, and we're like Roblox but blank. You have to make sure it's not superficial. It needs to be something maybe Roblox can't do, or something that maybe it fixes a flaw in Roblox's design, You need to do something that isn't superficial though. Maybe doing superficial too is good as well, but you need to also change the design of the game. Saying we're like Roblox, but we look like League of Legends, why would people move and play that, you know? Like, all of their friends are on Roblox, there's hundreds of thousands of games on it, and I'm not even sure if looking like League of Legends is an upgrade, even though Roblox does kind of look like a mess. Like, you know, there's really not a reason to move just if it's a superficial change. All right, so the chicken or egg deadlock. Actually, let me go back to that point. This is kind of a big point, I just want to make that clear. Finding something that differentiates your game in terms of design can be the biggest challenge when making a Roblox competitor. It's so easy when there's this bubble of games like this, and then Roblox is way over here. It's so easy to be like, well, we'll just do what Roblox does for X, Y, and Z, and then maybe we'll tweak this one thing. You need to question every decision you're making design-wise. How are you going to monetize the game? Are you just going to do what Roblox does? How are you going to have people access your games? Are you going to do what Roblox does? Rethink all of these questions and find out what the right answer is. In a lot of cases, maybe Roblox already does it the best way, but you need to question every design decision that you make. The chicken or egg deadlock. Users lead into developers, lead into content, leads back into users. So the problem here is that you can't artificially inflate these numbers. With a game like Fortnite, you can kind of just advertise the game, put a bunch of money into ads, and people will play it and they'll like it and then they'll keep playing it, and it's not a big deal. But with a game like Roblox, you can't just pump up your user count. You can't just pump up your content count and hope people will come. You're losing the magic there and how these things feed into each other. I've seen games that do this. They'll pay millions of dollars for like developer funds to make games. Or they'll try to make games themselves inside of the staff team using their platform, or they'll just spend millions of dollars on user acquisition, and they never feed into each other the way that they should. The solution here is to make these three things feed into each other better. You don't need to artificially inflate your numbers. This is not a normal game. You don't just advertise it like that in order to grow your audience. You have three things to focus on, not just user count and money. You need to have users, you need to have developers, and you need to have content. So the way that I found that these three things can feed into each other better are these 3 points right here. For converting users into developers, you should focus on things like lowering the skill floor and tutorials. So by skill floor, I mean making it a lot easier for people to take that first step into development. Giving them tools of like pre-made stuff like pre-made weapons, pre-made point systems, game modes, even things like visual scripting can help people take that first step into actually becoming a game developer. Somebody I was talking to the other day gave me this great phrase, gamifying game development, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but making it easier to convert users into developers will help get this change started. So instead of paying for 10,000 users and getting 10 developers out of it, you can just naturally acquire 100 users, just 100, just from word of mouth and stuff, and maybe you get 10 developers, the same number, out of them because you're converting them so well. Developers into content, I found that the easiest way to convert these things is with tools. By this I mean ways to make good games faster. You can have the best developers in the world on your platform, but if your platform doesn't have good tools, you're not going to be able to have any good content, and you're not going to have a lot of content because they're spending all their time trying to figure out, how do I do this thing in your game, and can you make objects fly and stuff? Give them pre-made stuff that flies, stuff like that, tools. Converting content into users, this seems like the obvious answer would be advertisement, but I found that it's not. Accessibility is your friend here. And I don't mean things like colorblind friendly mode, that's great too, but what I mean by accessibility is making it easier for people to try out your platform and then decide if they want to become a user. So maybe allowing people to play games without signing up for an account. Maybe they don't want to give their email. Maybe I've seen some people do this. You can even play games on your platform without downloading anything. It's all browser based. You just click and play and then you're like, hey, this is cool, I'll become a user. But if you have more, and for the love of God, don't make people pay to play your Roblox competitor. Roblox is free and that's their biggest thing going for them. But unless you're free, people can't access your game to become a user in the first place. But yeah, lots of content is nice and pretty, but if people can't access your game easily, they're not going to want to become a user. You can't afford to pay your developers to make games. You could pay them. Some of these platforms do pay them, but you probably can't afford to do that. They're paying a lot of money, and you probably can't afford that. So true, this is true. But you shouldn't really be paying them to make games anyways, if you ask me. This is something a lot of people that I've talked about this with disagree with me on, so take it with a grain of salt. If you're disagreeing with me, totally fine. But I'll explain my reasoning. Paying people to make games takes the magic out of it. And if you're game developers in this room, you know that's probably true. There's something magical about Roblox before they had Dev Exchange, where there were a lot of really good games being made. Kids really, before the age of 18, that are pouring their heart and souls into this because this is their free time. They make like a paintball game in Roblox, and it's a free-to-play game, and that's great. When you have to pay your developers to make content, they're maybe not putting their heart into it, but also they're probably monetizing their game. If you're Roblox and you have this dev exchange, the way you make money off of Roblox is by making money off of your microeconomy. Like if you have a paintball game in Roblox today, you're making money off of people playing your paintball game, and then you convert that back into real money and Roblox pays you. This is aggressively monetizing towards kids. I don't like it, and I think it's hurting you. You'll have better quality games, I think. Again, this is all just what I think. You'll have better quality games and more fun games and accessible games without paywalls if you're paying people to do things like tutorials instead of actually developing games. Tutorials and stuff and guides, that helps with that chicken egg deadlock that we talked about. That's why it's valuable. It's also much cheaper. People can write blog posts super quick. So Roblox, they're an established metaverse. So here we are in the metaverse. I love that word. Your audience wants to play Roblox exclusively, and you can't advertise to them. They're in this little bubble on the internet. How do you advertise to them? So this is a difficult one, but there are solutions here. If you do want to advertise directly to Roblox players, it can be good because people who are playing Roblox they're known to like this type of game. If you're making Fortnite, you're probably advertising to PUBG players. Everybody knows this. So advertise to communities that have limbs outside of Roblox. This can mean stuff like YouTubers. You can advertise YouTube channels that use Roblox tags. Even sometimes you can do some sneaky guerrilla marketing and find Discord communities that are extensions of Roblox communities. If there's a Star Wars group on Roblox, they might have a Discord that goes along with them. And if you can get in there somehow and, I don't know, maybe pay somebody to do like an event, you can advertise that way. But in general, focusing on communities instead of individuals is a really strong way to market your game if it's a social game, which yours probably is if it's a Roblox competitor. I credit Discord's success for overcoming Skype and TeamSpeak to this a lot. Discord has, visually, it was pretty similar to Skype at the time, maybe a little bit better, and feature-wise, it was pretty similar to TeamSpeak, but really Discord overtook them because they had better features for people to bring communities together. I remember the days when my friend group was on Skype and we first heard about Discord and we were like, let's check it out. This is probably going to be silly. Targeting gamers, I hate when they pander to us. But they had so many tools like roles and all of these different voice and text channels that was a lot more clean and easy to use than TeamSpeak. And they won us over. They got like 10 people all at once instead of targeting individuals through like Google AdSense. You're not established. You can't beat Roblox in the context of being a metaverse. So for starters, there is no the metaverse. There never will be. I refuse to admit it. There's only the universe and the internet, and they're separate things. There's no metaverse. But for real, there can be a lot of metaverses, is what I mean by that. There's no the metaverse. Metaverses, in the way that we're using it today, are these closed economies on the internet. And there's a lot of them. And especially in this stage of like the existence of this term, there are going to be a lot of them. Like Google doesn't have a metaverse yet. Roblox is probably the biggest metaverse out there right now. And there's going to be a lot of them before any big companies get involved. So yeah, having a closed economy platform, this isn't a new thing. It's not exclusive to Roblox. Lots of games have closed economies. Usually they're much smaller though. Some games even have economies inside of economies. Gmod is a closed economy in and of itself. There's people paying people for servers, and inside of each server, sometimes you have these role play games where you pay for the different ranks and the different jobs. It's crazy. But these closed economies are not new. There's no need to beat Roblox in the context of a metaverse. It's a silly term. It's an investor trap, is what I call it. So if you can't get Lil Nas X to do a concert, then you're nothing. This is true. Lil Nas X is one of the top indicators of success in the game industry. You should invest in reaching out to him and making connections very soon. Even Roblox has done that. Here's Lil Nas X's concert. I love this slide. All right. So the cost trap. I told you guys this was going to be about money. And because it's about money, you probably will not like my solutions that I found. But I do have a Roblox competitor, and I have no money. So for game server hosting, I would recommend you consider peer-to-peer or player-hosted servers. I told you wouldn't like these solutions. If you're into game networking, then you see peer-to-peer and you're cringing right now. You hate it. You want me to stop talking. And I'll move on to the next point soon. But you really need to consider this. Think about the trade-offs here. Peer-to-peer, you have to worry about things like hackers and laggy games, but you don't have to pay anything for game hosting. This is what I do. I am switching to player-hosted servers, but this is what my platform does, and we've never had to pay for any game servers. The reason this can be so expensive if you're not doing something like peer-to-peer or player-hosted is, Roblox pays for all of their games to be hosted. Any random dude can just join on Roblox, make a game, set the server count to like 50, and invite like their whole class, and they can just play on this expensive game server that's running. That's a lot of money. That's one random person. They have millions of players. Player hosted is another good solution. You don't have to worry about things like hacking nearly as much. You're still not giving authority to the game developers, which is kind of not great, but at least if the developer is hosting their game servers, they don't really have an incentive to hack in it. And in a way, is that really such a bad thing? You kind of want to have control over your own game if you're on a platform like this. But there are solutions. I think player-hosted servers are better than peer-to-peer, just for the record. Something you could do is actually offload some of the cost of player-hosted servers to your users by offering them the option to have you, as the company, host their servers for them, but at a price of maybe the in-game currency or like some sort of monthly subscription. It's not going to pay for it one-to-one, but it'll offset the cost, which is really what you're trying to do here. You need to pay less for game servers. You're not going to compete with Roblox when you're paying 3 times as much. Even something, any of these services out there for game server hosting right now, GameLift, stuff like that, you're paying more than Roblox. They have different solutions that have been cultivated for a long time. Web server hosting. So if you're using a website, then you have to pay for web server hosting. So I don't have a solid solution for this problem. One is to not have a website. But either way, whether you have a website or not, you still need a scalable backend that works well. And it needs to be reasonably affordable. This can even go down to making efficient code. This is kind of programming at this point, but having it be scalable and affordable is really important for the web backend. Do your research here. This is something that I really didn't consider much when I was getting started with my Roblox competitor, and the website end of it ended up being way more important than I thought it would be. especially if you're a game developer and you've never touched a website. So don't underestimate how big that can be. App Store fees, more costs, wonderful. Some of them are as high as 30%. So you should have some form of self-published payment handling. I don't mean like making your own PayPal, I just mean having a website to have PayPal and Stripe and whatever you want to use there. So this is kind of an iffy slide here, and I'll warn you guys maybe not to take my advice as legal advice, but for those of you who don't know, there was this big thing that happened in 2020, a big legal thing with Epic Games and Apple, where Fortnite purposely avoided the Apple Store payment system to just have their own and skip the 30% fee. And Apple was like, ah, that's bad, you're off the store. And then Epic Games sued them because they were like, wow, but we won money. So it actually happened in 2021, a year later, a judge decided that Epic was wrong on 9 out of 10 accounts. But on one account, Apple was going against an anti-steering policy, they call it, in places like California, where you can't force people on your platform or your app store to not talk about other forms of payment, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying here is you can have your game on a mobile app store and have a purchase currency button, and it takes you to a web or a little screen that says, go to mygame.com to purchase currency. It would appear that that is allowed, but again, don't take my advice as legal advice. Companies like Apple can probably still stomp you out if they wanted to, even though they lost a court case on this. But yeah, I've not done this before. I'm not on any platforms besides PC, and we have our own website, so we don't have to worry about these fees. But something to think about. Paying developers as reasonably or more reasonably than Roblox, that's a lot of money. Google says 22% to 36% of Roblox's profit goes straight back to developers. Is there any money left for the company? So I have two solutions here. This whole section, the cost trap, is a little iffy. It's about money, so it's kind of weird. But I have two solutions here. I realize some of my opinions are pretty spicy, so I'll do the spicy one first. First option, the hot take, don't have any exchange of in-game currency back into real money. I think it ruins the magic. And I already explained this a little bit earlier. I think it ruins the magic in your Roblox platform if you're paying people to make games. I also think it means your game, if developers are incentivized to make their users pay, then now all of your games on your platform have paywalls. You're like a mess of like the Apple mobile store, where every mobile game you open is trying to sell you something. There can be a lot of magic in a fully free user-generated content economy. So I would highly recommend that, but it's money advice. You probably won't listen to me, but there's magic there. Otherwise, you can do some number magic. You can nerf your economy's capitalism to lower the cash out volume, which is the amount of in-game currency that's being exchanged into real money, make that smaller, and then you can increase the exchange rate. So instead of having one, Roblox has, I think 100 Robux for like 35 cents, something like that. What I'm saying is you could have 100 of your currency for like 50 cents or some like bigger number, as long as the total amount of cash out is smaller. So now you can be like, yeah, we pay better than Roblox, but in reality, you did some weird economy stuff to have less money actually go to developers. So they're seeing a bigger number, but you're paying less than Roblox is. What I mean by nerf your economy's capitalism is this is kind of up to your interpretation. This is something you might want to talk to your uncle who's an accountant about. There are ways to do this. I have a pretty basic understanding. Raising the tax on purchases in your game. In Roblox, every time money goes from one player to another, 30% goes back to Roblox. So money is slowly deflating while people are buying it. If that number was like 40 or 50%, then there's less money. Every exchange, there's less money, so there's less money in the economy. So something to think about. So you don't have the team or the technology to compete. So you don't have the team. If you're an indie team or just a couple college students like me and my team was, you don't have the team to compete with Roblox. They have thousands of people, let's face it. So have some hope. Like I said, I'm on a very small team that makes a Roblox competitor. I have found that sandboxes are one of the easier types of games to make. Think about it for a second. Instead of making hours of content or story mode and all of these level scripted events and stuff, you're really just making tools. And if you're working with an existing engine, features already exist that you just need to put a nice wrapper around, like a nice user experience. It's easy to understand. You make it more simple than Roblox or than something like Unity does. Working with like a game engine there focused on developers being able to use it, but if you're trying to make a Roblox competitor, you're focused on users being able to use it. You don't have the technology to compete with the Roblox engine. Yeah. You've heard this before. We live in the age of free game engines. You should utilize this. I can't recommend this enough. If you're making your own engine, you're already years behind. It's just not a good idea. And you're probably not gonna look good visually if you're not, you have to have like a rendering person, you gotta have like the efficiency, it's a lot. Just use an existing game engine. This should be obvious. You don't have the technology to compete with the Roblox website. Yes, Roblox is two parts, a website and an engine. And have you ever worked on a website? Maybe, probably not. And not even to mention their website is massive. Think about Amazon and the features that Amazon has, searching algorithms, the checkout cart. Roblox has tons of features. They have groups, they used to have a forum, they have instant messaging, things that interact directly with the game where you can follow your friends into games, friend request, like there's so much. You have to compete with that. So there isn't much of a solution here. This is just something you have to accept. You're probably going to want some part of your team to be focused on web development if you have a website. So if you have a website, don't underestimate how much development will go into it. This is something I underestimated, and with our team, about half of the development efforts are directly to the website, and I didn't expect much at all to be related to the website. Websites are hard, and if you don't have a website, this can help you a lot because you're in grounds that are familiar. You're working within a game engine maybe, but you still need a strong back end that works with all of your features that you want. And that's something to think about. I was just checking the time. You need this back end to handle a lot of traffic. You need to handle a lot of data. You have tons of users, their items, their games, all of the interactions between them. If you're familiar with database stuff, my man Vince is. If you're familiar with all this stuff, you know that there's like a database table for everything, it seems like. So be aware that there's still a lot of backend involved, even if you don't have a website. So how do you advertise your game as a service sandbox? This is a weird game. We've talked about this. Roblox is not like anything else out there, really. And if they were there way before them. So how do you convey this game to players? Well, the term Metaverse is kind of a thing now, and people, the new generation at least, kind of understands what it is. They understand that Roblox is a Metaverse. Roblox has done all the pioneering for you. People know what a Metaverse is, and if you're making a Roblox competitor, you can probably just call yourself a Metaverse, and now people get it. This isn't really a problem anymore. Maybe in like 2018, this might have been a problem. You're trying to explain, it's like, we're like Roblox, but I don't want to say Roblox because then you're going to think of them. And you can say you're a Metaverse. People are familiar with this game concept. It's been around for a long time now. Some of your audience was born after Roblox was made, and they've probably heard of it. So how do you convey to players that your platform is better than Roblox or others? So now they know what your platform is. They've established, all right, it's like Roblox, but something's different. How do you convey that it's better? So this depends on your platform. This should be your first step, well, second step. First off, you need to figure out what your design is. But your second step is, what is your design and how is it different than Roblox? So you've decided you want to make something like Roblox, but how are you different than them? You can't just, we talked about this, you can't just make Roblox and then say it's Roblox but it looks like Fortnite. That's not going to work. People have tried that. You need to find your slice of the Roblox pie, as I call it, and figure out that niche and target it really hard. That should be your only focus when you're first starting out. But yeah, first step. So how did Roblox advertise? So Roblox didn't have anybody, nobody speaks in that voice crack. Nobody. So Roblox didn't have anyone before them to advertise their game. How did they get any players? So a better question is, what didn't Roblox do? Do your research here. They've done everything. They have almost invented new ways of advertising with how many things they've tried. I'm sure a couple years into their development, they were like, man, maybe we went a little too weird with our game. Nobody knows what this is. How do we sell this to kids? They're expecting a shooter or like an RTS or an MMORPG, but we have this Metaverse thing. They've done word of mouth. They've had creator programs. They've done website ads like everybody does. They've had this thing called the ambassador program, where you like refer friends. They had a different type of ambassador program where you get a link for your account, put it somewhere on the internet like Reddit or whatever, and every time people click it, then you get in-game currency. Like they've got all of these crazy ideas. Do your research and look at some of the stuff they've done. I'll be honest, it's not very easy to find all the stuff they've done, but they have done a lot of stuff. You need to be creative with your advertisement if you're not just copying what Roblox does. So how did other platforms advertise? Surely they didn't just say we're Roblox but different. So for all games market in similar ways, all the games that exist right now. Even the games that are Roblox competitors advertise in similar ways to each other. They try to copy what Roblox does. But I found that there are a couple platforms that do it slightly different or do some interesting things that I haven't seen before. So Core is an Epic Games-backed Roblox-like game. They're like, if somebody knows Core here, they're gonna hate me, but like they're like Roblox, but they look like Fortnite, and they use the Unreal Engine. They've done a lot of what I call guerrilla marketing. They reach out to influencers, and they don't say, hey, make a game on Core. They'll reach people who are game developers on that part of YouTube, and they'll be like, make a video on how good Core is for game developers. Talk about how much we pay. Talk about how it looks better, and how we're new and we're like going to beat Roblox. Like talk about this stuff. And I've seen a lot of these YouTube videos, and they have the little hashtag ad, and it works. Core is throwing money at developers. They're trying to inflate that developer number. We've talked about why that isn't really the best thing, and maybe half people here haven't even heard of Core. I don't know. They could be doing better. Sandbox.game is they're a different situation. They're like a blockchain cryptocurrency related thing. It is what it is. They kind of just exist in the Web3 community, and people are like, that's awesome. Because what they've done is they found their slice of the pie. Their slice of the Roblox pie is the decentralized world. Everybody who thinks Roblox is a good investment, but is like into crypto, and they also think crypto is a good investment, they threw tons of money at Sandbox.game. They got like 100 million in funding in their last round. Core got like 90, or no, Core had 100 and then Sandbox had 90. They also throw money at some really interesting things. I realize now that this is just something that's common in the NFT world, but they even did a collaboration with Snoop Dogg, which is kind of that's kind of weird, right? Yeah, check this out. So this is my favorite part of the talk. I'll probably just laugh here for 5 minutes. So this is the Snoop Dogg NFT on Sandbox.game. Get your doggies. Yeah, these are all the characters. The Snoop Dogg Pass, the Snoopverse Early Access Pass. This is all very typical NFT marketing, by the way. The whole like different characters and stuff. It says down in here in small text, there's 10,000 of them, and they're all unique. This is all blockchain stuff. So if you're familiar with that, this isn't anything new. But Snoop Dogg, that's cool. So that was a lot to absorb, I'm sure, and I went a little bit fast because my first test run of this talk was actually like an hour and a half. So I'm doing really well keeping it under that time. So let's talk about why you should compete. Nice breath of fresh air. Let's get your hopes up before we end. So the Roblox pie is big enough for a lot more games. They're a huge market, and there's almost no competitors. Core and Sandbox are out there. There's a couple really small ones that I'm aware of, because I'm also one of them. But it's a huge market, and there are tons of niches that Roblox doesn't serve. It's just massive. Roblox made $1.9 billion in 2021. I'm not talking investments, I'm talking profits. Yes, profits after they paid their developers 30%, their app store fees 30%, all of their web hosting, their game server hosting. They don't even take any shortcuts. They have a ton of money, it's crazy. Even 0.1% of that pie is $2 million. Again, after all of the stuff you're spending money on for your game. That's tons of money. Yeah, bogus money. There are lots of different slices of the Roblox pie. They're not all taken at all. There's only like a couple slices taken. There's like thousands of slices. So the people currently competing don't really know what they're doing. I'll probably make some enemies by saying this, but I truly don't think they know what they're doing. I also think Roblox doesn't really know what they're doing. They made a lot of mistakes recently. They're making a lot of money, but their game is kind of I should be nice. It's a lot of monetization. They're targeting kids. It's a little eh. So if you get over this low bar of making a better game than them, you can easily raise 10 times more money just by showing your stats. Like if you get that cycle going and you show, yeah, we advertised with $1,000, got 100 users, 10 developers, and 100 games, they're gonna be like, that's pretty good, because Roblox has to throw millions of dollars and they get like maybe 5 developers that are worth anything. Focus on tools, focus on lowering the skill floor. Yeah. There's another cycle that I found exists with these games. Development of a sandbox game, you're making these tools and all of these features for people, and then your users make stuff with those tools, and then they make cool stuff, and then that gets you hyped up as a developer, and then you make more tools for them, and then they're hyped up because you're making more stuff for them, and they're like, yeah, more toys to play with. It's a really, really fun cycle. I've worked on a lot of games over the past, like, I guess 6 years or so, doing personal projects and professional work, and this game is easily the most fun I've ever had developing a game. It's a really, really fun cycle. Having your audience right there as you're making stuff. Part of this is just the nature of being a live service game, but it's really, really fun to develop. I highly recommend it. If you're new to games, you'll learn a lot. This was me when I first started. Again, naivety, ego, all that stuff. But I wanted to do this. I thought I would be the next notch, right? But if you're new to games, making a sandbox game, you will learn a lot. I learned so much. I've touched almost every part of the Unity engine. I've learned so much about game engines that I converted to Unreal pretty easily in my professional career. I learned networking, web development. I had to make like my own little voxel engine thing. There's so much that you can learn here, and you're kind of dipping your toes into every category. You'll become very well-rounded. In addition to that, you'll probably, if you're an engineer at least, you'll probably learn a lot about systems design, because a sandbox game is a very big system and everything ties into each other. You're making user interfaces that interact with data, and then data that gets stored and retrieved, and all this stuff. You're gonna get pretty good at systems design in order to do this the right way. Yeah, I started working on mine in college. I really didn't know much about game development. But I can confidently say I probably learned the most on this project than any other project. Last but not least, Roblox is not beloved. It's pretty simple. Nobody loves Roblox the way people that they love Half-Life, they love Gmod, or like Animal Crossing. People don't love Roblox in that way. The people in this world who've said they love Roblox in the past, they probably don't say that anymore. They probably say Roblox has changed, yada, yada, yada. And the company behind it isn't even really liked by many people. They aggressively, I'm reading the script here, it's a little mean. They aggressively monetize towards children, and they borderline exploit their developers. That's a hot take. if you can get your game and your company's culture off on the right foot, making a good Roblox competitor and not just some weird money grab, you're going to be liked by many just for that alone. I'm not patting myself on the back too much here, but like my game's community is super, super positive, and they constantly will be like, I love that you guys don't, do this and this like Roblox does, because I don't like Roblox and it's, mean to kids and all this stuff. Yeah, just get started on the right foot and you'll do really, really well. You have to remember why we're all here today, right? Games. But games are about having fun and making art, right? In its many forms. If your Roblox competitor can focus on fun and creativity, then I think you're going to do just fine. All right, so before I end, here's some helpful sources. I highly recommend you check these guys out. That top link is especially awesome. I read it about 2 years into working on my Roblox platform and my Roblox competitor platform, and it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that I was kind of being like, I don't want to hear it, don't tell me how difficult it is, I'm the next notch. It opened my eyes a lot, so I recommend checking that out. Here's a quote by me: I've not failed, I've just found a couple ways that won't work. Garrett Swanson. I love talking about this stuff, by the way. People who know me know that I can go on about this forever. If you want to talk more with me about this, I have a booth for my game, World to Build, up in the Indie Alley. Come by and talk. I'll answer even more questions. And speaking of questions, we can get on to the Q&A section. I think we have about 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions about what we talked about? Yes?
So you're talking about competitors can't support how Roblox targets a younger audience. It seems like for some of the competitors, especially the blockchain sandbox companies, they target kids or it's not.
I would say that is the case. So the question for the camera, the question was, correct me if I get it wrong, Roblox seems to target kids, but other competitors like Sandbox.game target maybe the blockchain community, which probably isn't kids. So this is a great question. This is something that I love to make fun of Sandbox.game for. You couldn't ask me what they're doing. I don't know why they're making a game that is very much like a kid's game, but you have to have a crypto wallet to play. They've completely failed the accessibility checkbox. You can't play it without linking a crypto wallet. What's a crypto wallet? I'm 12 years old. What's an NFT? How do you do that, right? Like, you're completely failing the accessibility checkbox. And even though they have hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million in funding, they have like no users. They are in early access, but they really don't have anybody caring about their game except for people who are investing in it. I don't think they're going to do very well when they come to a full release. Yeah, that's my take on that.
I'm curious, related to that, while you're competing with Roblox, are you finding that in marketing there's a lot of miscommunication around Metaverse? Because maybe 5 years ago, Metaverse was like it's a second life like game. Now it's crypto based, and now it's about buying fake real estate. And like, are you finding that it's hard to communicate that like, no, we're not involved in that shit. We're actually like a game to become kind of fun, not an investment.
That's a good question. So again, for the camera, the question was, is there any difficulty with the communication when marketing about what the metaverse is? Because a lot of games that claim to be the metaverse are related to cryptocurrency, blockchain stuff, and owning, virtual real estate in a way. I would say so. I found that it seems to me that the metaverse term was coined by Roblox, and then cryptocurrency kind of saw that opportunity and ran with it. This is a good question. I would say that's something to be worried about, yeah. The metaverse being completely absorbed in cryptocurrency could definitely be an issue moving forward. Maybe don't use that word if that's something you're worried about. Find some other way of explaining your game. I always say that my project, I just say we're a voxel sandbox game. And that seems to do the trick because you make stuff in a sandbox game and we have voxels. I don't use the term metaverse, but if you see value in it, like a lot of big wigs with money do, then you could go that way. But yeah, be careful not to convey that you're cryptocurrency if you're not, because some people will see the word metaverse, think cryptocurrency, and never look back at you. And some people will see it, get interested, realize you don't have cryptocurrency, and then never look back at you. So yeah, something to be worried about. That's a really good question. Any other questions? Any questions about Roblox or my project? I know a lot about these things.
So you mentioned that your game has a lot of like positive reviews. So did you guys probably use like the community management, or is it just the nature of Metaverse game?
I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is wearing a mask. So you mentioned that your game has a pretty positive community.
Yeah.
So did you invest in like community management probably, or is it just because the nature of Metaverse like games they cultivate a
So for the camera, he asked, did I have to, I said my project has a very positive community. Did I have to invest in community management and stuff like that to get to that point? Not knowingly, but I would say it had a big part in it. We only recently now have community manager positions where we have 2 people working that position. But in the past, our development team has always been super, super involved in the community. We have even the engineers, like people like me, like that are engineers on the project. We're working on doing contests and hosting live streams and stuff. And it's not so much an investment, it's just because we love it. Part of that might just be because we love the game, you know, that's not the case for everybody. But that cycle I was talking about where you're making features for users and then they make content that gets you hyped up to make more features, that development cycle that's really fun, I think it's really, really powerful. It can turn every developer on your team into, you know, a community investment. You know, being a user and seeing the developers online playing the game and talking with people every day is like, that's a big deal. So I would say indirectly, yes, but some of it just from being more ethical than Roblox, people will right off the bat like you. People will join our Discord server and they'll be like, hey, I just heard about you guys. I'm so glad that you don't do what Roblox does with, you know, this gummy thing or this thing. Like you guys don't abuse people or something like that. And that does happen sometimes. So yeah, I would say both. Does that answer your question? Yeah, any more questions? Again, any questions about Roblox or my project specifically?
Is there a demo that we could
A demo
Yeah.
of the talk?
Or your game?
Oh, my game? My game's free. It's just worldofbuild.com. You can just play it. You have to download it though. Yeah.
So I've like for years thought, oh, I should go build a Roblox game. Is there a great starter tutorial that comes to mind? Like if I'm familiar with game dev tools, haven't built stuff in Unity or Game Maker, but never Roblox. Like where do I any top of mind resources to jump in?
So the question was, are there any starter tutorials for making a Roblox competitor? Not that I found. I didn't have any at least, and I think that's due to the lack of competition that they have. I think when people stumble upon games, this idea of like, oh, I want to compete with Roblox, they're kind of hush-hush. They're like, we got to get in there really quick and don't let anybody know about this. You know, I've got a great market idea. I don't think they're out there, but one of my slides I did say that I think it's really easy to make sandbox games. I found that you can get, the first working version that I had of my game took a week. I had a basic character that was rigged up and had a walking animation. I had, I think, a Unity plugin that let you copy and move objects around. And then I just wrote some custom code to convert that into a JSON file and then upload it with an API, and then another one to download it, and then convert it back into objects. And now you have a sandbox game. It was a super basic first demo, but like it's pretty easy to get started. But yeah, like the very first steps could be kind of confusing. So I don't have any sources for that, but you can, if you come up to my booth afterwards, like we can talk more if you want. Any more questions?
So in your talk, you talk about targeting each audience. Do you think that is that how you approach learning and you find your audience, or is it?
I love this question. So the question was, I talked about targeting a niche audience, and how did I go about that? Am I doing that? How did I come about doing that if I did? So I didn't start off doing this. And again, like I wish I knew this stuff before starting my game because it's really valuable information. I lost probably a good year and a half of my game where we were basically just Roblox, but different on a superficial level. And it didn't work, and I'm like, why not? We actually transitioned into using voxels later down the road because we found that it was something that wasn't just a superficial change. It sounds superficial, but the reason for it is it allows users to make content way easier than on Roblox. On Roblox, their whole thing is like you can make a mesh and then upload it and then it becomes a hat. And on World Build, you can make voxel-based objects in-game and any user can upload them. And it lowers the skill floor for converting users into developers and stuff. But we had to find that niche. Yeah, so it wasn't something that I thought of when I first started, but I definitely recommend it. Think about that first. What niche are you targeting and how are you different? Yeah.
Any thoughts on the Sandbox, which is a crypto-based competitor of yours?
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit earlier. I have my favorite slide in the whole talk is right here. I don't know, Sandbox.game is a game. They're crypto-based. I think they're trying to capitalize on the Metaverse. Oh, the question was what I think about Sandbox.game. I don't think they'll succeed because I think all of their money and influence comes from crypto people who are not players. They're investors. All 50 of the NFT owners in the world might be behind this game, but they're not gonna be players big enough to make it into a big Roblox competitor. That's what I think. It's a little harsh, but I don't think they'll do too well. They do have a niche though. They're also voxel based, which is interesting. But I've seen some of the assets that people are making on it nowadays because they give it a little bit too much creativity to the voxels. They're actually making stuff that looks like 3D models out of voxels. They'll make round shapes by having a bunch of squares of voxels to look like a texture, and they'll place them in like round shapes. It doesn't even look like voxels, so I don't even think they hit that niche. Yeah. Any other questions?
What makes your game different from Sandbox and Roblox?
So the Sandbox.game, their market hits. They're trying to hit voxels and they're trying to hit crypto. We don't hit crypto, but we do hit voxels pretty hard. Having a voxel version of Roblox is kind of aesthetically different, and that can bring some people in who like games like Trove. Some people like Trove instead of other games like it just because it's voxels and it looks kid-friendly. But the really big thing that we're trying to do, and we haven't hit all of our markers on it yet, is we want to lower the skill floor very, very low. Roblox is hard to get into as a developer. A lot of players exclusively play, and then nowadays a lot of their developers are already professional game developers. Game dev companies move in to develop on Roblox as a source of free audience, basically. What we're trying to do is lower the skill floor by having things like voxels, where anybody can, it's like pixel art but 3D. You just click and add stuff, and now you're making a cool avatar hat for yourself. We're working on visual scripting, which makes it easier to start coding for the first time. We have a feature called Game Kit that's almost out, where you can just use sliders and checkboxes to add teams, weapons, scores, score limits, checkpoints, like all of this stuff. We want to. That's how we want to be different. Is we want to lower the skill floor. We're trying to advertise as a. I'm stealing this phrase again. Somebody told me yesterday, but it's gamifying game development. We want to make game development fun. You make cool games faster on World Build than on Roblox. That's the idea. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? I'm sure at some point I'll get kicked out, but I'm gonna keep going until they tell me to stop. Or until we're out of questions. Any questions about first generation Pokemon? I also know a lot about that. The Pokemon rap? I can't do it. I can't do it. I have M&M in my blood, but I can't do it. All right, well, oh, one more question. My favorite starter? Charmander.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, thanks for coming to my talk. You guys are welcome to leave. I won't keep you any longer. If anybody has more questions,